tense that we're going to look at is the imperfect. The imperfect tense. And as we said, the imperfect tense is the durative past. So this is the aspect, this is the time, tense is equal to time plus aspect, so this is the durative past. So since it's the durative past, we know which stem we need to use, the durative one. And the imperfect, if we look at our list of sequence of tenses, falls into the secondary sequence of tenses. So now we have to use secondary endings, which we haven't seen yet. So I'll list them here. So first, the durative stem of our same word I hide is kriv. Now the secondary endings are a, es, e, ame, ate, an. So if we put these together, we will get kriva, krives, krive, krivame, krivate, and krivan. Now, let's accentuate these. So since these are verbs, they follow recessive accentuation, and we know that the ultima, if it's an alpha, then it is short. And if the ultima is short, then the accent goes on the antepenult. But we don't have an antepenult here. So what do we do? Well, in the secondary sequence of tenses, if the accent were to fall on the antepenult, but the antepenult isn't there, we add an epsilon, so that our word is ekriva. So let's do the same thing down here. Epsilon, our ultima, is short. So the accent goes on the antepenult, but in this secondary sequence of tense, the antepenult isn't there, so we have to add an epsilon and accentuate it. So ekrives, ekriva, ekrives. The same thing here, epsilon is short, accent goes on the antepenult isn't there, so we add an epsilon. Ekrive. For the first person plural, the ending, the ultima, is epsilon, and since we have an antepenult, we just accentuate it. Krivame. The same thing for here. Epsilon is short, accent goes on the antepenult is there, so we accentuate it. Krivate. And here, alpha is short, so the accent goes on the antepenult, which is not there, so we add an epsilon. So we have ekriva, ekrives, ekrive, krivame, krivate, ekrivan. And what the imperfect means in English is I was hiding. I was hiding. There is no evidence here that the action of the verb hiding ceases. It takes place in the past, hence the durative past, and the durative tells us that there's no evidence that this action has an ending. So, if we look at this here, the epsilon is, I don't want to say a relic, but I'll just call it a relic. It's a relic of ancient Greek. The epsilon here is called a temporal augment. Temporal augment. Temporal has to do with time, and augment is something that you add on. So the epsilon is a letter, a syllable that you add on to the beginning of a word if in modern Greek if the ultima is short and the antepenult doesn't exist. So it is the throne of the accent, and it only happens in the secondary sequence of tenses. So you won't see it in the present, you won't see it in the future, you will only see it in the secondary sequence of tenses. So you'll see it later on as well. So if we make our little formula, we can say that the imperfect is equal to the durative stem plus secondary endings. And we don't need to mention in our formula about the epsilon because it is implied because it is a secondary sequence of tenses. And we'll see more of it as we go. So the imperfect is the durative stem plus the secondary endings.